Hi, my name's Christina, the host of Inside iceDQ, and having a conversation with the CEO today, Sandesh Gawande. Now, let me introduce you to Sandesh. I've known him for quite a long time now. Please meet Sandesh Gawande, CEO of iceDQ, a seasoned data leader who has been driving large-scale data engineering projects across large banking industries, insurance, healthcare since 1996. That is as old as my little brother. Over the years, he observed that many production issues could be tracked back to the development phases, largely due to the absence of DataOps approach. This insight led him to found iceDQ, a data reliability engineering platform that unifies data testing, monitoring, and observability. Now, Sandesh, let's get into the basics. I would love to learn more about what your data background is like.
Hi, Christina. Nice to meet you. Hopefully, we'll enjoy this conversation.
Absolutely.
So, going back to my background, I started like my career around 96, 97. Worked as a data modeler, worked on technologies like Power Builder, Oracle at that time, and then from there, I decided to focus solely on data modeling and data engineering. So part of my earlier 2 years of my career, I was focused on aggregation of data for factory data sorry, not data factory, for seed processing plants and other companies. So from that background, I landed in US, and since then I've been solely working on data warehousing project, data engineering, data pipeline ETL, data migration, then system migration and things like that. Within that, I have worked all my life. I was a consultant, more or less. So I worked for Qualcomm early on, but then I moved to the financial sector. So work for Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, Nomura Securities, Merrill Lynch, Primer Fund, Bridgewater Hedge Fund. Many of these, JP Morgan Chase, insurance companies like Excel Capital. So I work for many of these companies, and what I realized, there is a need of, the rigor of engineering was not applied to data, data engineering processes or data systems. So that was my realization, and that's my background, where I started in applications, moved to solely data engineering projects, and then work for all these kind of banks and insurance companies and other firms.
Wow. So that is a huge list of a lot of background there between a lot of these companies that are still around today, much like you.
Hopefully.
Yes. With that said, now having started iceDQ, I believe it's been over 10 years.
Yeah.
iceDQ's been around. Can you tell me about what iceDQ stands for?
iceDQ stands for Integrated Check Engine for Data Quality.
Okay.
So the whole idea is, instead of doing one-off things, right? People say if you cannot measure, you cannot manage. But then people just started measuring things and not managing. So the whole idea was, how can I give an integrated solution that can work in development, operations, post-production, in the what you call compliance, all those places, right? That was the idea.
Wow. With my experience in DevOps, as it shows here, having started with a foundation with DataOps, it's very important, especially with the industry these days and all of this AI, which we'll be talking about here shortly. Now, you talked a little bit about why you created iceDQ. What was that epiphany when you knew you needed a company like iceDQ, or where companies needed a provider like iceDQ?
So actually, it goes back to when I was working for one of the insurance companies, and I talked to one. I was in the data engineering side, integrating data and whatnot. So when we developed the pipeline, my team developed the pipeline. We hired one testing person to test the data pipelines. And what I realized is, she used to work for long hours. She was the one person working on it. And then I said, how do you test data pipelines? And she showed me, well, here's the Excel. I get data from here. I run a SQL, pull the data in Excel. I run a SQL, pull the data in Excel, and I put it together.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I say, whoa, there's some problem here, right? Because this is not efficient. So that was the first part, but the second part was like, okay, how can we solve this issue, right?
Mhm.
Where I realized that we need a product. And then the second part is when I actually was working at other banks, I realized
Mhm.
like as I go from like being a data modeler to a data architect or a manager kind of role, I am responsible for delivery of the project data systems, right? So when
Mhm.
we were migrating one of the back office system for a bank, I didn't find a way to certify it because okay, we did the development, we are going to production, but how do I sign up? What do I sign off on? Because we didn't have a good way to test the system or certify the system. So that
Mhm.
was the point we said, okay, need to build this platform. And there was another point where I realized is once you start testing, when you go to production, you still need to monitor it, right? So that's where the integrated part came into place. So initially, it was a focus. My focus was on testing, certifying data pipelines, but then
Mhm.
it's also went into hey, I can follow the same concept for monitoring the system when it goes live.
Okay. Well, a question that's off the script. It really surprises me to hear that that was a triggering moment for you to create a software and a platform like iceDQ when you met a single lady
Yeah,
covering all this data review on an Excel spreadsheet. Do you find that the industry has changed exponentially from those times to where we are today?
unfortunately not.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
See, what has happened? So this is very interesting. If you look at quality, see, we are in both quality
Hmm.
operations and the production aspect, right? The fundamental issue is if you look at data engineering product, actually, if you forget for a moment data engineering, and if you're building an application, there are
Hmm.
software designed to test the applications. Like, you have a
Right.
screen, you click on it and something happens and then you replay it, right?
Right.
Since data pipelines don't have screens, it's happening in the background jobs. So there
Hmm.
was no tool, no concept in there. But that is the beginning. So it was always behind. But then people somehow build some in-house systems or some code and script. But if you look at the overall industry, I think less than 1 to 5% of the company people have automated this data testing. It's still bad right now.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. That is with so much data around, that's a very important,
Yeah.
fundamental key point to recognize there. With that said, you mentioned already kind of why did you create iceDQ with the story that you've been brought with such high compliant industries like insurance, like banking.
Yeah.
Why iceDQ over something else?
See, there are fundamentally three reasons, right? Let's go one by one, right? One
Sure.
reason is um, you need to automate something,
Hmm.
right? But so the one reason is automation. The
Hmm.
second reason is, can you use this automation only in testing or monitoring or observability? But if you can use it all over the place, so that's the second reason because it's not just I tested it and it's good. You need to monitor. So we provide that ability to not only test it but monitor and observe. So that's the second reason. The third reason is we have this rules-based approach, rules-based, and now the AI approach is there. But fundamentally, what you're saying is if you have data and you have processes, you need to link them to business processes. And if you are
Yeah.
not linking them to the business processes, you don't know what you're doing,
Right.
right? So we have a unique ability to not only automate but support all both development and non-production and production environment,
Hmm.
but also connect these rules to the business requirement. So, for example, if you are saying that I have these financial numbers, a report I need to submit, I can say for this report, these are all the data elements that should be right, or the process
Hmm.
should be right, and then you can link that. And I think that is very valuable in terms of doing that. The other reasons, secondary reasons, is if you have a system that is transforming data or processing data, you need another system to observe and monitor and test in parallel, right? So you can audit it and say,
Hmm.
in accounting, they call the 4 eye principle. There are two eyes who are doing the transaction, another pair of eyes actually auditing the system that everything is done
Hmm.
correctly or not. So I
Right.
would say these are the main reasons why somebody should consider us.
Wonderful. There was something that you mentioned earlier about kind of infusing data operations with business operations. What kind
Yeah.
of symptoms that you've noticed and recognized in business operations that would cue somebody on the business side to want to reach out to a company like iceDQ?
So let's start a simple example.
Mm-hmm.
There are, if you look at the banks, they have to submit these
Mm-hmm.
reports to FINRA. There is a
Yeah.
SOX compliance. There's BCBS 239 compliance. If you're doing that, then the question you need to ask, let's take the FINRA, like, simple reports,
Mm-hmm.
right? What if you are submitting those reports, how do you
Mm-hmm.
know whatever reports you have created are to the standard, and the data and the reference data, whatever is inside, is according to the expectations of FINRA? That's number
Right.
one, right? So you need something like iceDQ to verify that those reports. But even more important is, how do you know if the data that is processing, right? You got orders, you executed, you processed, you calculate your position and balances and all those things. How do you know the data is consistent between this thing? Because you not only have to submit the correct reports, but you have to prove that to them that I have a system in place that when the data is being processed, it is consistent across all the platforms through it is going, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at BCBS 239 regulation, they are very simple, right? If you have anytime the data moves, right, you need to ensure that the data, there's no leakage in data in between. You have processes
Right.
correctly. How do you do it? You need iceDQ, right? You need an
Mm-hmm.
integrated platform that can do all these things: validation, reconciliation, certify the data, certify the processes, that
Mm-hmm.
everything is happening correctly. So, and then of course, if something goes wrong, is notification and all that is there. But fundamentally, that's the reason. If you are processing data for
Mm-hmm.
compliance reason, for internal reason, you should look at us. So that's the production use case. But
Right.
if you are migrating, let's say you're migrating data to the cloud, how do you know that the data that is on premise is exactly matching what is there in the cloud?
That's right. Yeah.
Right? So if you're migrating to Snowflake, you're migrating to BigQuery, whatever system you're
Mm-hmm.
going, you need to certify that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a good way. This product is very useful for certifying that, from that point of view.
Of course, of course. You mentioned cloud, and the definition of cloud 10 years ago was
Uh,
way different than it is now. And you did touch on a lot about the reliability of such data, whether
yeah.
you're, migrating or just managing and hosting or developing on that data.
Mhm.
Just to answer this question, or if there's any additional information to this, why do you call iceDQ a data reliability platform?
Okay, it's a very interesting question. We like, most of the people from data quality aspect believe, right, whatever output comes out, you measure it, right,
Right.
and be happy with it. We don't believe that. What I and personally the company believes, that quality is not an accident,
Okay. Quality
right?
is not an accident. That is a
You
great
have to
quote.
engineer data quality, right? That's the second point. So it's not an accident. You have to engineer data quality. I'll give you an example. If you have a reliable car, right, like a
Mhm.
good quality car, we'll touch reliability in the next part. But
Okay.
is it good quality because somebody just manufactured it, or they have put in processes in place to manufacture in such a way that you get a quality product?
Mm.
Or you can just, I produce 100 cars and I will measure the quality of each car and then rate it, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't help.
No.
Right? So that's why we focus on not on measuring, but actually engineering quality. Right?
Yeah.
Now, where does reliability comes into picture? Think about this. You have a knife, you cut onions with it, right? But
Mhm.
the problem is, okay, well, if you cut 5 onions, what happens to the knife after? It's a great quality, You can even take a shaving blade and cut onions. It's a high
Yeah.
quality, but will it survive? Is it reliable? After
Ooh.
5 or 6 onions, what happens? Like, you
Yeah.
buy a new knife, right? So that
Yeah.
is the difference between quality is at a moment in time. Reliability is you had done something in the system that
Mhm.
delivers the quality over a period of time. So the reason what we look at is, there are two basic reasons. We say you have to engineer quality,
Mhm.
and not just focus on quality, but you have to focus on reliability aspect of it. It's consistent quality over time. And if you don't have the engineering concept, you can't deliver a consistent data quality over time. So that's why we call ourselves as a data reliability platform.
I love that explanation, especially for the non-technical folks listening. It does remind me of, when Tesla cars first hit the market. It
Yeah,
was cool in quality, but reliability, they were driving off the road. And then, of course, you have Toyotas, which
uh,
are highly renowned as being reliable cars, even
yeah.
Subarus and Hondas. So I thank you for sharing that explanation and analogy there, because that is very relatable. And your definition of reliability, quality spread over time, and having that right type of data. Because there are people out there who sell to 100 clients because they have 100 clients, but that's in a very short period of time. So
Yes.
that is a great analogy to explain the difference between a data reliability platform like iceDQ.
It actually also comes from my personal background. I'm a mechanical
Mhm.
engineer, so I
Okay.
see how factories are assembled. When you create a factory, you
Yeah.
don't start a manufacturing. You test every component is orchestrated. You test
Mhm.
all the equipment, machines, and
Right.
things like that, right? Then you start the factory. When you start the factory, you get the raw material. You need to test the check the
Mhm.
raw material before you, right? Because what is the output quality depend on the raw material that you got and the processing you did, right? So
Mhm.
the concept of raw material is your data, and the factory
Mhm.
is your process. The machines are your process, and the output is the data again you get, right, in some format. So that's why. And then once the output comes in, you can always observe it and see patterns and all those things with
Yeah.
AI and anomaly detection. If suddenly there is a bad quality of something wrong with the product, but you need this whole analogy you need to think, and that's my personal thesis and background that's injected in the product.
I love that. I was a former drafting and design student with
Uh,
mechanical engineering, and I did not go with a mechanical engineering route. As you know, it is about precision, and
yeah,
one little minute measurement off can destroy a whole system,
yeah,
much like data, dirty data, can really
yeah.
destroy a whole platform. So that is a great example of how your background and your world has infused itself into
So,
SDQ.
assembly line has a specific orders. You can't.
Right.
You need to weld,
Yeah.
grind, and then paint. You cannot
Right.
paint, weld, and grind, right? So if
Yeah.
you didn't test the during deployment of the factory, in our case, is data
Mhm.
factory, right? If you
Mhm.
don't test it, imagine what is going to happen.
Well, diving into the next question here,
Yeah.
which is a little bit more educational for those who might not know, what is the difference between data testing, data monitoring, and data observability?
Okay, it's a good one. Um, Testing is, basically quality assurance, right? So
Right,
when
right.
I'm thinking of data testing, I am thinking non-production environment,
Hmm.
testing everything that gives the data, like, the data that I'm processing, going to use test data generation and testing the test data, checking the test data, testing the data pipelines, testing the orchestration or scheduling of the process, testing the performance of the process, all those things in non-production environment. So whatever the ETL code is doing, what the requirements told it to do. So,
Hmm.
for example, I said, write a ETL program or a data pipeline that take individual customers, corporate customers, and government customers, right? And only load, let's say, corporate and government. So
Hmm.
when the ETL developer develops the ETL process, you should not be taking the individual. So you need to
Mm.
test that. How do you know
Yeah.
how what the ETL process is doing after it was developed? Okay, I gave the requirement, but what is
Hmm.
it doing after it was developed? The second part is, there's a longer answer, but shorter answer is, you also see, because each process you need to load the customer, then load the order. You can't load the order and then the customer. So all this orchestration is correct or not. So these are
Hmm.
the two things that you do, two, three things that you do in data testing. Testing also have use cases: data migration testing, conversion testing, integration testing. Like, I think we talk about migration one, right?
Right.
Data warehouse testing, big data testing, cloud migration testing. So all those
So
testing
many.
come to so many of
Yeah.
them, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same concept, it's just in different use cases, right?
Hmm.
Then you come to production. Now, in production, when I say data monitoring, what is happening is there are two kinds of monitoring. There's white box monitoring and black box monitoring.
Okay.
And then there are a few more concepts. But think about this. I tested this process in non-production environment,
Hmm.
but when I go to production, do I throw away all the testing rules that I have created, right? Or can I monitor the reuse some of the rules into the system? So one of the things what we say is, when you migrate the data pipelines, you also migrate some of these rules, iceDQ rules, in production.
Hmm.
The reason you do that is you can reuse. Number one is you can reuse whatever. You don't have to migrate all of them, but some of the rules you need to migrate to the production system.
Hmm.
So in monitoring, what happens, right? For example, as I said earlier, what is the output that you are going to get? The output quality of the output depends on the input data and the processing of it. Now let's
Right.
look at the input data. If you're receiving a file, what are the possibility? You received a file that is not in the format that you ever expected. They added new
Hmm.
columns, they removed some
Right.
columns, right? They give different data types, they interchange the location of the column, they give the same file that they give you yesterday. right? They gave you an empty file, right? There are so many things possible. So before you process, are you checking it? So that's monitoring aspect of the input side. Then monitoring the process, right? Let's say if I receive 100 records, the process load the 100 records. So this is basically used for operations and compliance because I'll give an example, right? If you look at your yesterday's balance, let's say $100, and today you did a transaction of, let's say, $10. So what should be your output? New balance. The new balance should be yesterday's balance plus today's balance. If I subtract today's transaction from today's balance, I should get yesterday's balance, correct?
Yes. Right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Right. So these kind of monitoring you need to do into the system, right? And if something goes wrong, the system should stop, because once the data is integrated into a data warehouse or a big data lake or something, what are the chances you can reverse engineer the whole thing? It's almost impossible. So monitoring is more operational, more compliance related, right? Validation, and it is worried about input data as well as looking at the operational aspect or the processing aspect of the data, so that you catch any issues and you escalate immediately. You either stop the process automatically or tell somebody before it is too late. Because once the batch is over in the night, and in the morning user comes, and if they find out the issue, it's too late, right, by that point. And even if you find out the issue on the right hand side, after that 10 other processes have ran, and now that data is used by other processes, and that data used by another process, there is a cascading chain reaction that is happening. It's very difficult to undo. So you need something in the production ops space.
Of course.
Then if you go to the observability piece, what we are saying here is finally some product is coming out, right? Data is coming out. Now you can look at the pattern and say, every day I have 10 million records. Why suddenly there are 2 million records, right? Or my daily transaction, if I have a shop, there's $1 million transaction per store. But now I see it's like suddenly $5. There was no vacation. What happened? So there is a anomaly detection engine that looks at these patterns and say there are other things it takes into consideration, holidays and things like that. But fundamentally, there you are looking at the final piece, right? So the concept is I make sure that I develop it correctly, then I monitor it, and then I observe the pipeline, which is more at the aggregate level and all that. And so usually if you do the first two steps correctly, you should hardly have any issues in the last step. It's just the insurance policy at that point.
Yes. And with the volatility of many factors, as you mentioned, from the production or even just the observability, and many organizations increasingly relying on data-driven strategies, maintaining data integrity, as you mentioned, becomes very critical to unlock insights, like you mentioned with the observability, reducing risk and driving business value. How is iceDQ different from other quality platforms or data quality platforms?
I think the main thing is like this, we follow this DataOps concept, right? And it is integrated with the business processes. So for example, if you are a CFO and you have to submit some report, how do you trust these numbers, right? Whatever numbers you are giving, right? So our system gives you that complete capability, traceability to figure out if before I sign off on this report, I have all the testing, monitoring, and observability in place to capture all possible issues in the system. So that I think that is the unique value addition that the product provides.
I love that. With the many challenges that companies are facing these days, whether they want to keep data management or observability in-house, and the challenges that they run into because there is so much data out there, from even a small social media house to a large banking industry. What kind of companies use iceDQ, and what kind of companies could benefit the most from using iceDQ?
See, any company that depends on data for their decision making, or that's one. That is internal requirement. External requirement is like, if you are a big company doing migrating to cloud or something, that's another. Third is anything compliance related, right? These are the three. Because fundamentally what you need something in place that validates, reconciles your data, your processes, everything before you can open your mouth or do something about it, right? So basically we have banking, insurance companies, healthcare companies. I'll give you an example, right? In healthcare companies,
Mhm.
You cannot say my data is 99.99% accurate. But
Nope.
because no, you can't. Because what do you mean by that 0.01%? Why is not accurate?
Mhm.
Because it's possible that for in a 10,000 customers, it might be like 10 or 20 customers where instead of common cold, you have put tuberculosis over there.
Mhm. It's a human error.
Look at the impact that if I go to a big hospital or a big
Mhm.
healthcare insurance company and instead of common cold, they put tuberculosis over there. You imagine what treatment I'm going to get.
Yeah.
And the issues related to now regulatory fines, the customer is probably going to sue you, right, on that.
Mhm.
You can look at some of the companies, how much fines they are paying because their data doesn't reconcile or doesn't match. It's
Mhm.
amazing. So all big firms, we have from retail to this thing, but usually like $1 billion and above companies where data is important for all this aspect point of view,
Of
customer
course.
point of view, internal operations point of view, for example, the compliance point of view.
Of course.
If you want, I can give one other example.
Yeah, of course.
Uh, One of this bank migrated to cloud.
Okay.
No, they migrated to another system.
Okay,
Okay.
that's huge.
Uh,
Banking's doing
yeah.
migrations like that is no
Okay.
easy feat.
Yeah. And the whole, where you, their whole retail banking platform, right?
Mhm.
Now, imagine if the migration is not done correctly. Suppose the reference, so I can see your data. This actually happened. You can see my
Okay.
data. People can withdraw more money than that is there, right?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So they had to take the system offline,
Right.
right? What happened to the customer? How much money did they lose? Like $5 billion?
Mhm.
Sorry, like $500 million loss, something like that. They were
Mhm.
fined. Like I don't remember the numbers. The people who was running the show was fined. So why get into all these things, right? When
Mhm.
you can implement something to certify, test and certify your platform,
Mhm.
because the costs are huge. Forget all the financial losses, just the reputation losses, right?
Right.
Right. It's just like crazy.
And it's funny you mentioned about the banking, and we hear stories from a non-technical person. You hear stories between the banking urban legend of taking more money out that's in your bank account, from
Yeah.
airlines, shutting down full systems because
Yeah.
one little data point is off. And I love that you bring up the 0.999, right? There is this promise out there to even get 4 nines or even
Uh,
5 nines, because there is that little smidge of human interaction on data that's
Yeah,
still there.
and it's something to monitor each individual. You can't just say like, I think it will be 99% good. What is
Mhm.
that 1% is what?
Right.
What is the
And it
impact of that
could,
1%?
yeah, absolutely. And especially in big industries, as you mentioned, that 1% could destroy a lot.
Yeah, even
You know,
0.1% could destroy a lot.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
With that said, you mentioned very briefly of how to infuse like a platform like iceDQ from production to even development.
Uh-huh.
Can you explain a little bit more about, can iceDQ be used in both production and development environments?
Yes, absolutely. It's by design, not by accident
Mhm.
again. What we believe is the DataOps concept where you build something, you
Mhm.
don't throw away, you don't even throw away your tests, and use it for testing in non-production
Mhm.
and use it for monitoring and observability in production environment.
Mhm.
Because I'll give an example. This will explain it clearly why it is useful in production environment. So when these data pipelines are run in production, there are systems like AutoSys, Control M, and other systems in place, right? But the problem with them, if there is a fatal error, only they can catch it. They cannot
Yeah.
catch. They don't know what the process is doing, what data it is processing. So you need something like iceDQ to check if that process is doing its job or not. So, and the example I promise, this is in the data pipeline. But remember, when you buy a car, after buying the car, you don't put a speedometer or a
Mhm.
battery indicator or a TPMS, the air pressure sensor or something, right? You get built into the car, right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's
So,
right.
so the question is, when you are developing, there their product is car, here our product is data, the system, the factory, right?
Mhm.
When you put it in production, can you give something with them to monitor the system, right?
Yeah.
Or do you want the ops people now to start building rules? It is our platform support, but it supports both ways: white box monitoring and black box monitoring. White box monitoring means when you develop the system, you are
Mhm.
aware of what the issues could be, and you
Mhm.
give monitors like gauges with it, right?
Yeah.
And black box means once you have the system, you are creating additional rules and things like that to monitor or observe the system.
I love that. And I was going to ask you earlier what white box monitoring and black box monitoring is.
Yeah.
I did not know there was a big difference there, but thank you for that clarity there. Now, diving into a bit more about the product itself, having high quality data is essential, as you mentioned earlier, for making informed decisions, regulatory compliance, which for the most part fundamentally doesn't change too much. But as fast as technology has been moving, there are these vast, updates happening in the compliance world. And of course, operational efficiency. Can you explain your rule based approach to data validation and reconciliation for iceDQ?
See, before, let's talk about pre-iceDQ and post-iceDQ.
Mhm.
Pre-iceDQ, what they will do is they will develop pipelines and
Mhm.
also write some kind of ETL code to validate what the pipeline is doing.
Yeah.
Right? So you write a script to process the data, and you write
Mhm.
another script to check the processing is done correctly or not. But see,
Right.
this is development,
Yes.
right? So tomorrow your business rule changes, right? And you make the changes. So there are two problems with this. One problem is when the business process changes, you need to
Mhm.
also pull back the script that you have written and rewrite it.
Mhm.
The second problem is that script is actually embedded somewhere in the black box. You don't have access to it. It's code-based concept, right? Not
Right.
rule-based. So instead of that, if you look at, there are rules engines for transactions, like, so let's say if you are in retail, if you are let's say a bank customer, if you are with me for 10 years, I will give you 1% discount. If you are 20 years with me, I'll
Mhm.
give you a 2% discount, right, on your
Yeah.
interest rate or something, right? So
Right.
these rules keep on changing, when to apply and what rate to apply. If you
Mhm.
hard code this thing inside the application, you'll have to go through the whole CI/CD pipeline to rebuild those rules, right?
Mhm.
So code, it's not rules. So what we say, we are a rules repository. As the rules, business rule changes, you changes the rules, and this system run in parallel to your data processing. So
Mhm.
you change your code or not change the business rule changes, you change the audit, and you can do the check and validity and audit on your system.
And I love that
So it's
explanation.
more
Yeah.
dynamic. So
No, after you.
I was saying it's more dynamic
Mhm.
rules based approach.
Yes, dynamic, agile, as you know, in your very honorable experience in this tech industry, the development and operations have always been siloed, and that's why you have DevOps, much like an architect over an engineer. An
Yeah,
architect can build a bubble building, but an engineer would say, that's ridiculous. You can't actually engineer that.
yeah,
So it's really fascinating to see how much that has changed, and to what you mentioned, having role-based approach keeps you agile, keeps you moving with the business and
yeah.
not being siloed in this data,
In the code,
code.
right? And it
Right.
also gives you transparency, because you can say, hey, what rules do I have?
Hmm.
What is in the rule, right? You can look at it. How do you
Hmm.
look at a code? It's written in Python or binary somewhere inside some system
Yeah.
where you probably don't even have access to.
Which is a perfect segue to the next question here.
Yeah.
With your product of iceDQ, can you explain your iceDQ's performance and scalability in the industry?
So the people often, this is before I answer that question, people answer
Mhm.
often confuse performance and scalability,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But let's separate what performance is. Performance
Of
is
course.
how many records are complex, how fast I can process it. Okay. Scalability is not about how fast I can do, but how much volume of data I can process.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. So now, so where does it come? Right.
Yeah.
So if I give you, somebody can build a product, right? And say, I can process 1 million rows in 1/10 of a second. Good. You have
Hmm.
good performance.
Yeah.
But then the question is, what happened? It becomes 101 million rows or 2 million rows.
Yeah.
Does it perform, or does it crashes completely?
Right.
So we have designed a proprietary engine that scales a multi-actor, like processing, cluster-based processing, which not only has the in-memory part, does the processing, which does fast processing, and
Hmm.
the scalable architecture, cluster-based architecture gives you scalability. So not
Hmm.
only we can process millions of records in a second, but also process billions and trillions of records without crashing the system. So that is
Yeah.
important.
Which is
So
very important, as we
yeah,
talked about the volatility of data and making sure it's reliable and safe,
yeah.
especially during these large migrations. With that said, what data connectors and integrations are supported by iceDQ?
We have an extensive list of connectors. So let's start with files, right? From flat files to JSON to all kind of exotic
Okay.
types of
Yeah.
files we support. On the right hand side, we have connectors to the cloud databases and all that. We have all kind of relational databases, like MongoDB is a document database, but all
Mhm.
kind of databases. So we have about 100, 150 connectors. So extensive connection. We also have application connectors like for SAP. All these are built in because the way the software is designed, the connectors are independent of the processing engine. We are continuously adding as new technologies, new database comes into picture. We are adding those connectors as we expand with this.
And I think that's such a really great value to your customers, having this continual review of your product, making sure it's the most up to date, the most, freshest thing on the market. As you know, there's so many new things coming out in data,
Yeah.
especially these days. And to have iceDQ kind of be at the forefront of those challenges, at the forefront of those upcoming happenings with that. Now, we talked a lot about use cases, which thank you. You've had some really great analogies for us between, the health and the cars and the knives. So that was really helpful. Um, if you could kind of dive a little bit deeper into that, who can use iceDQ and who are the primary users between roles and people that might be the ones that see the symptoms the most? How
Yeah.
can they know, like, oh, these are the challenges. This is how I can use iceDQ. Let me give them a call.
Let's take one, right? In the testing space is the quality engineering, reliability,
Mhm,
quality engineering people. And the use cases like, all kind of ETL pipeline testing, data warehouse
mhm,
testing and all that, right? So basically, migration testing, that's another use case. Cloud migration, because we can connect across local systems and cloud systems, right?
mhm,
We have distributed connectors. So basically, one of the ICP for us is the quality engineering folks or QA folks, right?
mhm.
Then the second one is data ops and data reliability people. So if you are running data pipelines in production, then you need ops people over there. Those are the people. There are compliance people who are interested in making
Mhm.
sure that you are testing, like monitoring the system, reconciling, validating the system, all kind of operations related people over there,
Yeah.
right? And then the third one is the data quality and governance people, kind of compliance people who have the governance platform, but they need some product to look at the data and tell them what is wrong with the data,
Mhm.
right? So, governance comes from the feedback. Governance is based on how do you govern something. I am a governor, but the governor, if you've seen, is like it adjusts its speed depending on the requirement, but it gets feedback from somewhere, right? So if you want to govern your data platform, you need iceDQ like tool that provides you the input saying this is
Mhm.
wrong, this is failed, this is not, give you dashboards and things like that. So if you look at this, quality engineering, data reliability engineering, ops,
Right.
and then this data quality governance and compliance. So these are the
Okay. So
three
there was a
buckets.
lot of there was a lot of roles that you broke there. And
Yeah.
the next series of questions that I'm going to ask you is going to break down each of those roles and how useful iceDQ can be for those teams. So how can quality assurance teams use iceDQ for data testing?
Let's take one example. There is no physical way to test millions and billions of records, right?
Mm-mm.
And the pipeline can be tested because they don't have UI directly. So we
Mhm,
provide them the automation capabilities to test their. So basically, productivity improvement for them, right?
mhm,
So that is the testing use case. As I give an example, you are migrating from on-premise Oracle database to cloud Oracle or Snowflake. So you need to connect one side has to go to the cloud, one side has to go to this and do the testing,
mhm,
right? How can you do it? You can't bring billions and billions of records in Excel and compare it, right?
mhm.
That's for them.
Right.
For operations people, you have tools that does what you call monitoring of the processes from the system point of view, like it crashes
Mhm,
or something. But if the process is successful, still it is possible that you process the same file that you received yesterday. It is possible that you ran the same process twice, right? Who knows what
mhm.
happened?
Yeah.
So for operations people, this is very useful to get this thing. And you want immediate alert. You can't wait for. There are thousands of batch jobs running in a system. You can't wait for all of them to get over. You need something is wrong, and then
Mhm,
immediately stop the process. So that's what we provide for them. Compliance and governance and quality people, they need these reports, overall quality scores, how the system has trended over time, data
mhm.
contracts, all those things. So they get all those kind of utilities out of it. So all different people, different use cases.
Okay, and then you pretty much ran through the rest of those questions between compliance and data quality and governance. I
Yeah.
do want to ask you a question that's not on here. Based on what you've said, we talk about the many roles that would, actively be the end users of iceDQ's product, what is something you wish the ones signing the approvals of these, whether it's the CIO, the CFO, or the CEO, what are ways that you can quantify the value from a non-end user, at this level,
Yeah.
outside of compliance and having clean and good data?
Here's the thing, right? Where is the value? See, there are two kinds of value you get out of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
One is productivity improvement, right? That you get at the user level,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that cannot be the only reason to get a product like that. So
Right.
the organization, the CIOs, the CTOs, like,
Mm-hmm.
at that level, right? They have to accept that I take decisions based on this. And I am the one, if I am reporting on something, let's say for either I need from the compliance people who
Mm-hmm.
are not interested in the productivity side of it, but more
Mm-hmm.
interested, like I need to make sure that I submit correct reports to authorities, regulatory authorities.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that is one level. And then from the internal, from the finance and the operations people, like, the C level suite, they are the one who should make this as a priority for them. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what I believe, other than the people who actually use it for productivity purpose and
Mm-hmm.
efficiency. But this is more related to what I'm saying is the business outcomes are more in the compliance and the decision making side of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is, one of those things you look back on, what you wish people knew to make great decisions on bringing on a platform like iceDQ, not even at the user level, but at a business operations level, which you mentioned quite a bit on how you infuse this operations and data ops into the business operations, whether it's role-based approach and keeping it agile and scalable for any business, especially those who might be a little hesitant to bring on a new reliability platform like iceDQ.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen a little bit, as many have, the word AI, right? AI has been the big name. We've seen it for years, even last year, with many talks about AI. And man, even from a year ago to where it is today, I feel it's changed a lot. With that said, anybody could look onto iceDQ and see that you guys have AI. Can we dive a little bit into how that has been a key factor to the benefit of iceDQ and, of course, for companies using it? How has AI integrated into iceDQ? Let's start with the basics.
There are two parts to this. One is the like a machine learning. Everything is thrown together, but I'll try to break this. There's a machine learning part of it and the AI part of it, right? Especially generative AI. If you look at the observability piece, you have to look at the anomalies over time, right? That's where the machine learning part come in. It learns the patterns over time and figures out, right, that your transactions are not matching or the numbers don't look good. So that's one piece is integrated into the platform. Okay. So that's the machine learning part of it.
Right.
The second part is the generative AI capabilities and all that. So what we have done is think about this. Earlier, we were thinking of giving software to people, right? Now we are thinking is we give you a data reliability engineer to you, like an assistant to you. So instead of you directly working on the application on the platform, you can actually talk to this agent, and the agent will work on your behalf. So that will give immense, productivity and all those things, to the customer. Then there are levels in that. So where I tell it and it analyzes and does something for me. So that's in productivity improvement. But then it can become more intelligent. It can look at this data and the processes and figure out what's wrong with it. And it actually creates rules and monitors and does whatever it wants to do with it, right? Creates rules for it. The third level is it looks and finds out the impact and notifies people and all that. So we are building at multiple level on this side, where it helps me to lower my work effort, right? Then it actually does it on its own. I don't even talk to it. It looks at the data, understands the data, creates the rules and keeps it. And then the third level is it actually understands the implication in the organization and notifies and does whatever it is required to do with the system.
Nice. And so you did tap into, how AI agents are beneficial for customers, especially the end user, to be proactive and being able to kind of recognize what type of data is being put here, and for those arrangements to make it, again, saving the many out there using data and having data operations, so they're not getting burnt out, they're not getting fatigued or tired to see so much and be able to be and trust of a system like iceDQ and reliability. Do you see any things on the horizon between, whether it's AI being involved more with iceDQ or just in general from your experience of data and AI coming together and what's to come for us?
AI is already there in the picture, but if you all the customers are going on AI, they're using the data to data and using AI on top of data. What
Mm-hmm.
we are talking about, the whole engineering, data engineering pipeline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Infusing AI to make sure that whatever data you're getting is the of the right quality, and there is like a resource that is actually thinking about your data, analyzing your data, finding problems with the data, reporting
Yeah.
you, and if possible, even telling you how to fix it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to dive into a few questions about you, Sandesh, because you have created such a beautiful company. This has been around for so long, and to see how iceDQ has been able to roll with the times. Um, with that said, you mentioned that you have been in this industry for a long time. What were you doing before you got into this industry?
As I said, I was earlier before this, I was a mechanical engineer. I
Mm-hmm.
accidentally got into a startup back in India. They
Mm-hmm.
were doing a lot of data projects with especially Power Builder and Oracle. And that was my background. But then in 2 years, I jumped into the data engineering side of it. So if you look at it from before this product, I was basically working data. Before that, also, I was working with data, but by education, I was like totally different, spending my time on the farm and working on cars and things like that, right? So
Yeah.
that was during and before engineering. After that, I completely shifted on the software and data side of it.
Oh, wow. And what an incredible shift, right? And if you could talk to the old, the younger version of Sandesh 10 years ago, 15 years ago, what is something you would have shared with him that you know now in the industry that you're in?
Uh, I think it's a difficult question, but see, right now, what I know is because of this AI, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
jobs are going to go away,
Mm-hmm.
especially generative AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is more important. What I talk to people nowadays is it is more important to compare and you read something, you should be able to compare and understand it. And the ability to communicate what you understood somebody. These are the two most important skill that people like me or people like
Mm-hmm.
anybody, if I was young, I will focus on these skills. Given any problem, can I
Right.
analyze it? Can I understand it? What the cause is and what the root cause is, right?
Mm,
And then communicate that thing like, hey, this
yeah.
is what I'm saying, and this is how what I understood. Because what happens, right? If you don't develop your analytical skills, you don't understand the problem. If you're not able to understand, it doesn't matter. It might be a leakage at the house, or it might
Mm-hmm.
be leakage in data. It might be
Yeah.
a car that you cannot start. Why it is not starting to anything. But I think that ability to analyze a problem is very important.
Yeah.
The second thing is whatever you found, can you communicate to it to somebody? That's These are the two main thing. And then of course there is the entrepreneurship side of it, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
see the problem again and again, can
Yeah.
you detect a pattern and suggest a solution or a product on top of it? So
Right.
that's that, but that's different level. But fundamentally, I think if I was young, I would have focused more on how to solve a problem and how to communicate that thing.
Right. That is, we always think about what we would have told ourselves when we were younger before we got into this industry.
Mhm.
Now, I imagine, Sandesh, that you mentioned earlier, let me never get an argument with you because I feel like you'd pull all these data points all together to be able to have a very lengthy debate. Um, Outside of all this data and all the things, iceDQ, what do you do to relax and have fun and be able to really recalibrate, outside of the data world that we are in?
I used to do photography. I got into short films a long time back. So I like to spend tinker around with machines. I have a engine at home. I
Mhm.
want to open it, do fix things. So mechanical things. Either it's on the art side or
Mhm.
basically if I go back movie making again or something like that. I went there for a short
Okay.
time. I lost my money, so I came out
Mm.
of it. I made a short film long time back. Uh,
Very cool. Well, I'd love to see that one day. I feel like a lot of our listeners might be very interested in seeing that one day.
But again, it is the same thing, right? I like to design, right? So it's a piece of painting. I used to paint long time back. I stopped painting because it's very difficult to share your thing. So painting, photography, I got from painting to photography to movie making, like short, not really movie, short film making, and then. But with that and tinkering with machines, that's my
I
relaxation.
love
It's
it.
my Zen moment.
No, good, good. I love that. I did see a video recently about digital code making art, and it just was fascinating to see. But also, there's just something about, like you mentioned, the Zen moment of being able to create your own art as a human
Yeah.
versus an AI system. Now, with that said, are there any goals or things that we as listeners should be on the lookout for iceDQ or in data in general?
Yeah, I think the in IT, everybody should look at the GenAI. In our product space, the GenAI capabilities that are coming in, I think they are going to be groundbreaking and out of the world as it happens, because it's going to change a lot of things, lot of things.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, to close, Sandesh, it's been an incredible experience to speak to you and learn more not only about iceDQ's history, but you as the CEO and bringing this all together from your many challenges facing coming into this industry and your many insights to see what is to come. Any last words for our listeners and our watchers here today?
Look out for GenAI. Look out for a lot of jobs. It's challenging. It is amazing. It's scary. It's all at the same time.
Yes, yes. Not to scare anybody. I know Halloween's coming up here in the States, so generative AI has definitely made its mark from last year to even this year and beyond.
Yeah.
And with that, Sandesh, that's all I have. I'm going to do a little bit of a closing for this. So thank you,
Christina.
everyone. Think Inside iceDQ here, which has been an incredible conversation with our wonderful CEO, Sandesh Gawande. It was awesome to learn all the things that you've shared with us between the history, the many experience that led you to decide to make iceDQ. And please be on the lookout for our teasers, our videos, and much more to come. If you want any more information about iceDQ, please check out their website and their many social media platforms today. And with that, Sandesh, thank you again for joining us on this conversation. I hope you have a wonderful time and looking forward to seeing this.
Thank you. We'll keep talking, more talking.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was an enlightening conversation with Sandesh Gawande, CEO of iceDQ. His journey from identifying systematic data falls to building a platform that tackles them head on is a testament to the power of insight and innovation. If you're navigating complexities of data reliability, Sandesh's approach to unifying testing, monitoring, and observability might be the blueprint you need. Now, thanks for tuning in. Stay curious, stay data-driven, and if you would like to learn more about what's happening, please follow iceDQ on all social media platforms. Hope to see you again. Bye.